Hi Cancer, welcome to your eclipse forecast. So this is going to cover the June and July eclipses that will take us from the 21st of June right through to the November eclipses that will begin a fresh cycle for us and end 2020. So I'm going to read the charts for the solar and the lunar eclipse as if Cancer was rising. So if Cancer is not your rising sign, I do recommend that you go and watch the video for Cancer rising, because the house placements will be correct and therefore the predictions around life areas or kind of focus points may be more correct. I also recommend that you go and check out my geoscopes that I've done on YouTube, because you might also find that they provide additional useful information that will help you to get really clear and kind of fine-tuned details when it comes to the themes that are going to be activated by this particular eclipse. But this is essentially a 6-month forecast, so do bear that in mind. You may not necessarily see things happening straight away, but I hope you find it useful. So before we start, I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that I have done an astrological overview for the solstice eclipses that I have linked to my astrological written forecast for the June eclipse, and will be on the members page as well. And then in addition to that, I've also done, as I said, the geoscopes on my YouTube channel. So plenty of information for you, but that should help you to navigate the next 6-month cycle, and I hope you enjoy it. So we're going to start, Cancer, with your solar eclipse horoscope, which covers the annular solar eclipse that happens on the 21st of June 2020. So this is going to kickstart into motion another 6-month cycle for you that will last from June until around about November, when we have our last set of eclipses happening for 2020. It's worth saying that this is the last eclipse in this particular Cancer Capricorn axis, so this ends a kind of 2-year cycle for you when it comes to major shifts and changes that have been catalyzed by these eclipses that have been happening since around about 2017 to 2018. So this will be the end of a major chapter for you by the time we get to November, and I'm sure you'll probably breathe a huge sigh of relief, because it's definitely not been an easy couple of years. But I think that when you look back, come November, you'll realize how much you've grown and changed, and, feel a sense of accomplishment that, maybe while you're kind of in the thick of things, you can't really see, due to kind of a lack of perspective. So this particular eclipse will have the sun and the moon in Cancer in your first house, in the first degree of Cancer. So in many ways, you're kind of following this sort of classical interpretation that I've done for the astrological overview forecast. You're kind of almost the test case for how this eclipse is going to sort of play out. So the first degree is always one of the degrees that are the most kind of potent, the first and last degrees of any sign. And so I think that you're going to feel this eclipse particularly keenly. Now, the way I think it's going to work is that we're going to be sort of at the solstice point, and we're also going to be making the Mercury is going to be making a conjunction to Sirius. So this is really kind of activating the heart chakra. It's really opening the heart chakra. It's connecting our heart to the sort of heart of the cosmos, as it were. It's really kind of expanding our ability to love and to convey unconditional love to others, to sort of radiate it out to the planet. So I think that you Cancerians are going to be playing a really important part in the ascension process, over the next 6 months, and that's something to be really mindful of and proud of as well. But, having said that, Mars will be in a T-square to the nodes, and the nodes, of course, are sitting across your ascendant-descendant axis. So this is not going to be easy energy to sort of hold the space of unconditional love and peace, because, Mars is quite agitating energy. It can be aggressive. It can also be disruptive energy. So this might be a little bit tricky to do, but this is almost what you've kind of signed up for as far as, your soul purpose or your soul mission on Earth. And your mission is to try and find a way to help people, to help the collective to find new and better ways of dealing with conflict, of asserting needs, and of overcoming differences of opinion, basically. And working with the sort of vital life force. That's the other way that this energy can also work. Mars is about kind of yang life force energy. So I think in this way you're kind of almost the sort of you're holding that womb wisdom that I think is so important in helping masculine energies to reach their full potential, you know, that kind of power behind the throne, or the sort of power of the mother, that sort of Oedipal kind of relationship, where, you know, you kind of hold men to account, you are their conscience, you call them on when they're not really pulling their weight, or when they are perhaps overstepping the mark. And so I think see that role, particularly within the sphere of family, as being almost part of not just your kind of your purpose as a parent, but also in terms of your kind of soul purpose. So, you know, really important energy. And this could also play out when it comes to significant other relationships, you know, particularly romantic relationships. And that will be highlighted at the lunar eclipse when the sun and the moon straddle your, you know, your first and your seventh houses. But this eclipse really is more about you, Cancer. As I say, it's about opening up the heart chakra, and I think it's also about getting in touch with your healing abilities and your sort of hidden skills and talents that you may not have been aware that you have. And the reason that I say that is because Mercury will be retrograde in Cancer at the time of this eclipse, and will be activating Sirius. So now I have done quite a lot on these Sirian activations in my overview video, particularly during the second half when I look at starseed activations and fixed star aspects. So you might want to check that out if you haven't already, just to sort of get more detail. I'm not going to, you know, focus on that too much, other than to say that this period might be where you are kind of awakened to either your Sirian ancestry, or past lives, or talents, skills, or healing abilities, or creative abilities that come from connections to Sirius. So just something to bear in mind. This is sort of really mother goddess energy, so a divine feminine energy that you're kind of really tapping into, whether you are male or female. It's also about shining brightly. That's the other thing to say about this energy. Sirius is the brightest star in the galaxy, and as such, you know, kind of exudes this beautiful blue light. It's the other interesting thing about it is it's a binary star, so it's actually made up of two stars. So there may be something in that, given that Venus is still retrograde in Gemini and will remain in Gemini until around about August. Now Venus will be turning direct, and she will be direct for the follow-up lunar eclipse in Capricorn, which is going to highlight relationships for you. So I'm going to get into that in a little bit more detail in the next horoscope. But needless to say, Venus is currently traversing your 12th house, and it's interesting because she and Mercury will both be retrograde at this particular eclipse. So there's a week where they kind of cross over, and so the emphasis is very much on the past, and that could be your personal past. So it could be kind of hindsight, it could be looking back at past experiences, it could be a sense of nostalgia about childhood, but it could equally be about past lives. So, you know, just something to bear in mind. And it's possible that now that messages could start to come in, you could start to remember, you know, past life events, or encounter people from your past lives that feel familiar to you on some level. That's also possible now, but I think a lot of it is going to focus on memory for you. So, you know, just something to sort of bear in mind. And then Mars, as I said, is going to be sort of active because of the nodes. Now, Mars is in your 9th house, and this is the house of beliefs, higher education, foreign travel, foreign connections, as well as things like ethics, morals, the law, cultural values and traditions, that kind of thing. Now Mars will be making a sextile to Jupiter and to Pluto on either side of this eclipse. So unlike the last eclipse that we had in Sagittarius, where we also had a T-square between the Sun and the Moon and Mars, this one will feel a lot less fraught, because there's this sort of harmonizing energy coming from Jupiter and Pluto. So I think at this eclipse there's a real opportunity here to sort of harmonize it's sort of any kind of agitation or conflicts or disputes around 9th house issues. So that's kind of something to bear in mind. I think it could also, as I say, activate healing abilities qualities in you, and these could be kind of facilitated by another person. It could be a teacher or a mentor of some kind, and the reason that I say that is because Jupiter and Pluto will be in your 7th house, so this is kind of others, this is the other, and both of them are quite powerful, so they could be authority figures or teachers, as I say. It could also be a co-worker or a health worker, or it could be somebody that you have a kind of creative partnership with. It could be a child, or it could be a lover, so somebody that you get romantically involved with. Just, a few things to sort of bear in mind. But the key thing to say here is that Jupiter and Pluto will be perfecting their conjunction on the 30th of June, so about a week after this eclipse. And this is the second pass of the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. The first one was, of course, in April at the 444 gateway. So this is a time when you're likely to be revisiting issues from that time, activated from that time. So you may want to pay attention and think back to those eclipses, to that conjunction and that 444 gateway, to see whether there are any parallels with what happens at this particular eclipse. But as I say, do remember that this eclipse catalyzes a 6-month cycle, so it's possible that some things won't be immediately apparent. They may take a couple of months to sort of materialize, or kind of for the penny to drop. So don't be surprised if this is kind of a movable feast for you. The other thing to say is that Saturn, which is currently retrograde, will be moving back to the 0 point of Aquarius, and this was the point that it reached when we were around about at the March equinox. So just after the equinox was when Saturn ingressed into Aquarius for the first time. Now Saturn is retrograde, it's kind of gone back to this point, so it's kind of drawing your attention to again what happened in March and in April, and so you might want to think back to that time to see whether there are any parallels to what happens now. And these are likely to be around things like boundaries, as well as kind of obstacles or limitations, or structures to do with tax, to do with trust, to do with sex, to do with shared resources, or kind of contracts. So have a think about that and see whether anything springs to mind. So that's your solar eclipse. Quite a lot to sort of take in, but let's move on to the lunar eclipse next, because you'll see that issues kind of overlap and dovetail with this solar eclipse. So when we get to the lunar eclipse in Capricorn, Cancer, the focus is going to fall very much on relationships. As you can see from this chart, we've got a packed 7th house with tons of planets, fixed stars, and chart points in the sign of Capricorn. So this is really going to be the emphasis for the lunar eclipse that happens on the 5th of July. Now, lunar eclipses tend to end or conclude things, or bring them to sort of a culmination point. And I think what you are closing out, or kind of resolving, or finally getting a handle on, are issues that came up particularly around relationships and business partnerships that started either in January or December of 2019, because in January we had a solar eclipse in Capricorn that was at a very similar degree to this one. And then in December, we had another solar eclipse in Capricorn, which began the 6-month cycle that took us into the first half of 2020. So it's possible that at this eclipse you are kind of concluding or resolving issues begun at that time, and they will have to do with relationships. Now, the moon will be conjunct the fixed star Vega, and this is fascinating for a number of reasons. So first of all, it ties into when it comes to starseed activations, it ties into Lyran kind of karma gifts and sort of galactic kind of ties, or sort of ancestry. So I do urge you to go and watch that video that I did for the solar eclipse, the astrological overview, because I do get into that in a little bit more detail. But needless to say, Lyrans are kind of known for for their sort of love of adventure, of being very pioneering. They are risk takers. They are very physical beings. They love everything to do with, you know, kind of the earthiness of the earth plane. So they love the good life. So, you know, it's possible that you could either meet somebody now who is like that, who's very attractive and seductive and quite that really kind of draws you in, that you feel magnetically attracted to, or you could be dealing with somebody that you already know who is like that, and that's because, as I say, of this conjunction between the moon and Vega. Now, Vega is also associated with the constellation of the harp, the lyre, and here it also ties into the myth of Orpheus. So Orpheus was a musician, and he was sort of known for playing the lyre in a way that was so enchanting that it would sort of tame even the wildest of animals. So there's something here about seduction, enchantment, magic, the magic of music, the sort of mesmerizing quality of things that are lyrical or that have kind of a rhythm to them. There's something also about frequency and vibration. So I think that this is really tapping into your sacral chakra, Cancer. So that I think is something just to be aware of at this particular lunar eclipse. As I say, it's very much focused on relationships, and it's interesting that at the time Venus will be direct, so she will have moved out of her retrograde period, so she'll be direct in the sign of Gemini, so in your 12th house, and she will continue to move through Gemini until around about August. So if you've had any sort of issues arise around Venus retrograde, this is the opportunity to now kind of put them to bed, put them to rest, finally resolve them, you know, make up with people, kind of get closure or clarity on a particular relationship issue. This can also, of course, relate to you know, things like communication and you know, the way maybe the way that things ended. Perhaps you kind of feel that there were things that were unsaid, or you know, that you I think you just likely to get a new take on how you saw things before. So, you know, again, you've got a couple of months to do this. There's no rush necessarily for this to happen immediately. But I do think that you will see some kind of developments at this lunar eclipse, because Venus will be making a sextile to Mars. Now, for you, Mars will be in your 10th house, so this is the house of career, of your sort of your public persona, of fame, success, public office, you know, your direction in life, all those kind of good things. So it's possible that Venus here is more about how you feel about achieving your goals, how you feel about your career, whether you feel that you've got the sort of wherewithal to really give things a go, to go put yourself out there, to market yourself, to kind of toot your own horn, all those kind of issues. So given that this is a really positive aspect between these two things, and that Mars is now in its own sign, so it's working in a much more focused and happy way, I think you could make real progress now when it comes to your career. So that's just something to bear in mind. The moon will also be trine to Uranus, so this will be in your 11th house, and here I think what it's highlighting is relationships with friendships or with groups. So it could have to do with either online dating, it could have to do with social media connections, or it could simply be friendships. So I kind of feel as though you know, things are changing positively for you in that sphere. So that's something to be to look forward to, basically. It could also be that a friend surprises you now. Perhaps you haven't seen them in a while. They're suddenly getting contact. But I think there's a lot of feel-good vibes around this particular aspect. So, you know, expect good things. And then the sun will be, so the sun in this particular eclipse, the sun will take the place of Mercury in making a conjunction to Sirius and Canopus, so the fixed stars that I talked about in the in my astrological overview. So because this is really personal to you, Cancer, this is the sun in Cancer, I really would pay attention to those starseed activations and the information that I provided in that astrological overview, because I think it will be important that you sort of that you're aware of this, you know, at this particular lunar eclipse. Mercury will be retrograde, so again this is emphasis on looking back at the past, about memories, about revisioning the past. And here in particular I think it's going to have to do with your relationships because of this connection between the moon, the sun, and Mercury. So again, I think this is a time when you are really kind of getting some closure, putting to bed any sort of long-standing heartbreak or heartache, making up with people, or finally having the courage to walk away from certain situations, or simply seeing the lessons in certain romantic connections or painful relationships with others that maybe have confounded you for some time. So lots going on, and I think just give it 2 weeks. Don't forget that lunar eclipses happen at the full moon, so we are talking about the waning moon cycle. So just sort of allow things to play out over the 2 weeks. They may not all kind of happen immediately and at once, but I think that this is going to be a really positive and healing lunar eclipse for you, Cancer, so something to look forward to for a change. You might also want to check out, I will be doing some geoscopes specifically for the lunar eclipse when we get closer to the time, so that might provide you with some more details about what to expect. So that's it for me. I hope this forecast has been useful and enlightening. If you enjoyed it, do hit the like button if you're watching this on YouTube. And don't forget about the other links that I've got in the membership area around the eclipses, which include the video geoscopes for each of the signs, as well as the cosmic overview, which goes more in depth into the astrology of this particular 6-month event. But in the meantime, I'm wishing you all the best, happy solstice blessings, and I'll catch you again for my forecast for the lunar eclipse in Capricorn.